The impeachment inquiry into Donald J. Trump barrels into its next phase with the first impeachment hearing in the House Judiciary Committee set just hours ago for next Wednesday morning. That is the committee responsible for drafting the articles of impeachment based on that investigation conducted by the House Intel Committee. The Judiciary Committee sending a letter today to the president asking if he plans to show up next Wednesday and inviting him to question their witnesses. From that letter to the president, quote, "If you would like to participate in the hearing, please provide the committee with notice as soon as possible, but no later than December 1st. The Judiciary Committee picking up the baton from the Intel Committee for this next phase of the House impeachment inquiry as public support for Donald Trump's impeachment tops 50%, and as a federal judge delivers a blow to Donald Trump's claim of absolute immunity for top White House officials, writing in a ruling yesterday, quote, "Indeed, absolute testimonial immunity for senior-level White House aides appears to be a fiction. Presidents are not kings. They do not have subjects bound by loyalty or blood whose destiny they are entitled to control." Now, that case revolves around the congressional testimony of former White House counsel Don McGahn, his lawyer on the receiving end of some flattering tweets from the president himself today. That lawyer, William Burke, out with a statement of his own. Quote, "Don McGahn will comply with Judge Jackson's decision unless it is stayed pending appeal." The Justice Department is already appealing the decision, but it nevertheless guts the legal justification that's currently being deployed by the White House to justify stonewalling Congress. If the judge in the case involving the testimony of John Bolton's deputy, Charles Kupperman, makes a judgment similar to the one we found out about last night, it could open the floodgates for the testimony of senior impeachment witnesses like Kupperman, John Bolton, Mick Mulvaney, and Mike Pompeo. That is where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. With us from the New York Times, Washington correspondent Mike Schmidt. On Capitol Hill, MSNBC's Garrett Haake. Former acting U.S. Solicitor General Neil Katyal's here. And with us at the table, former Chief of Staff for the CIA and the Department of Defense, Jeremy Bash. And Karine Jean-Pierre's back. She's Chief Public Affairs Officer for MoveOn.org. Garrett Haake, let me start with you. These are two different cases, two different judges, but just talk about the potential impact of a ruling like the one in McGahn's case on these so far seemingly reluctant impeachment witnesses, the most senior administration officials.
Sure. As for McGahn himself, he's unlikely to show up, and Democratic investigators are at least divided on whether they want him at all. Remember, he was called originally to testify about what he told Robert Mueller something like 7 months ago. But what this could do is it could shake loose a host of other witnesses who Democrats do want to talk to, not the least of which is John Bolton and his deputy, Mr. Kupperman. These are two folks who worked very closely with the president on national security issues. They might argue for other exceptions, as their lawyer has already done so, saying that this ruling doesn't apply to them because they work so closely on national security issues. But there are lots of other officials who Democrats would like to talk to, folks who worked at the OMB, for example, the Office of the Management and Budget, political appointees who can help explain how money moved or how it didn't and why it didn't. A number of other officials who all fell under the White House's argument of absolute immunity here, essentially saying that no one close to the White House could be compelled to testify at all. This judge's ruling throws that out as a concept for White House aides, White House advisors. They could still put forth different elements of privilege, executive privilege, and so forth on specific questions. But the idea that they could be just blocked across the board from even showing up goes out with the bathwater in this judge's ruling. And if Democrats can shake loose some of those other witnesses, really at any point up till they vote on the floor, up till a Senate trial starts, we know the broad facts of the case. They're unlikely to change. But any additional detail, any more information could be the kind of thing that sways Republicans, or more importantly, the public in continuing to support this inquiry.
Mike Schmidt, let me read how your paper covered this today. In rejecting the Trump administration's sweeping claim that top presidential advisors, as Mr. McGahn was, are absolutely immune from being compelled to talk about their official duties, meaning they do not even have to show up, the judge said the same is true even for those who worked on national security issues. Notably, John Bolton, Mr. Trump's former national security advisor, has let it be known that he has significant information about the Ukraine affair at the heart of the impeachment inquiry, but is uncertain whether any congressional subpoena for his testimony would be constitutionally valid. He wants a judge to decide. Mike Schmidt, what is the potential impact of a similar ruling in the Kupperman case, which is the one filed by a lawyer shared by Mr. Bolton and Mr. Bolton's deputy, Mr. Kupperman?
Well, that case has a whole nother issue to it, which is that the House has actually dropped the subpoena of Kupperman, but Kupperman's lawyer, Chuck Cooper, wants the judge to rule on it anyway to get some clarity on this issue because he knows that it will hang around and he knows that Bolton's hanging out there. Look, the House has decided not to subpoena Bolton. I'm not sure exactly why they did that. If they did do that, it will continue to delay this and move it months and months ahead. And it seems like they want to move quickly. They obviously have scheduled things for the Judiciary Committee next week. They want to move this to the Senate. And the problem is that speed slows, that speed moves them ahead quickly, but it really hurts their ability to get those people the closest to the president. And that sort of allows Republicans to make this argument that say, look, we haven't heard from anyone, who was in direct contact with the president besides Sondland, and there's not enough evidence for us, and the Democrats are not able to pressure the Republicans enough.
Neil Katyal, Mike probably just described what is going on behind closed doors among Democrats debating the pros and cons of subpoenaing that highest level of presidential advisors. And we've seen some news reporting about John Bolton going to Donald Trump. John Bolton's lawyer made clear a couple Fridays ago that he had lots and lots and lots of interesting information about this affair. His closest deputy, Fiona Hill, has testified to John Bolton's behind-the-scenes conduct in a way that you have to assume if John Bolton disagreed with her characterizations, we would have heard from somebody. Can you just take the latest reporting from the Hill, from Garrett and Mike, and help us understand what the actual calculation must be for House Democrats?
Yeah, so first of all, let's be clear about what's going on. The president has gagged everyone in the executive branch from going and testifying on the Hill. Every employee, every document, every email. Now, a few witnesses have come forward, and even Trump administration people have said, I'm going to go tell the truth to the American people. And that's what we've been seeing in these hearings in the last 2 weeks. And now the question is, will former National Security Advisor Bolton and other people come and testify? And a subpoena is like a document that forces these folks to come forward and testify, and it can be challenged in court. And what the Democrats are saying, and I think there's a lot of force to this, is, look, we already have the goods on the president. You just read the transcript on July 25th. That outlines the entire case, and certainly the witnesses of the last 2 weeks have demonstrated it. So Ambassador Bolton is just kind of gravy. It'd be helpful to have, but you don't need it. And so I suspect what will happen in this dynamic is they won't subpoena Bolton because they know that'll take some time. But as this moves to the Senate, if they decide they want to call John Bolton as part of the Senate trial, the Democrats in the House who will be prosecuting the case will be absolutely within their rights to do so. And it's almost criminal to think that this president is not allowing these people to testify who have firsthand knowledge. I mean, the American people should have that right now. We shouldn't have to wait for the Senate. But if we have to wait for the Senate, we'll get it at the time of the Senate.
Almost criminal, Jeremy Bash, sounds like it might be another article of impeachment, which was the case in the Nixon articles.
Yeah, and I love Neil's Thanksgiving metaphor about John Bolton being gravy. Actually, it's like getting gravy 6 months after Thanksgiving. It's not necessary, it's totally useless, and you would never delay Thanksgiving to wait for the gravy 6 months later. The Democrats, as Neil pointed out, as others have pointed out, have precisely everything they need to move now, to beyond the fact stage, to the law stage. What is the law of impeachment? What is the constitutional standard? And that is what the House Judiciary will dive into. To Mike's point about the Republicans trying to claim that there would be some process foul if the Democrats didn't wait for these witnesses, I mean, that's ridiculous. They're the ones who are saying the witnesses cannot come. How can they turn around and say, we have to wait for the witnesses? It doesn't make any sense. So I think the Democrats have exactly what they need. They'll move to the next phase. And again, I expect articles of impeachment to be on the floor before the end of the year.
Well, just to torture our Thanksgiving metaphor, let me be the fly in the gravy bowl for a minute. I mean, I think the point is that the case has been made, and you've got former Republican Senator Gordon from Oregon saying the facts are the facts, they're irrefutable, and they're stubborn things. But I think that what Garrett and Mike are also speaking to is the political reality, which is that I have not talked to a single Democrat who thinks that conviction in the Senate is even possible. I mean, do some of these witnesses move the political equation?
Well, but to parry on that point, I don't think that waiting for Bolton or Mulvaney or others is going to actually change that calculus. I don't think that there's anything that those witnesses can say that will really fundamentally change where we are here, which is that we've gone through several weeks of amassing the case from mostly career professional observers of the facts. They presented their case. The House Intelligence Committee did an enormously professional job, and the facts are what they are. And nothing that anybody says after this is really going to change that.
So you offered to parry. I'm going to come back at you.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Is that you, Garrett?
Let me jump in here. Let me jump in here and torture this metaphor even further. I think Bolton is a perfectly acceptable turkey sandwich leftover days later. Look, here's what we know about Bolton. He talks. He tweets. He's writing a book. He cannot seem to resist wading into some of these issues. If Bolton goes on a book tour in January during the impeachment trial, his information is still usable. It's still useful to the public. It's still out there. It's still the kind of thing that could move public opinion. There are a whole bunch of other ways that somebody like John Bolton could affect this process other than being hauled in front of a committee to testify. He has a penchant for wanting to tell his side of the story. And if he does that at any point during this inquiry, it's still useful.
Mike Schmidt, take us inside what the lawsuit is designed to do. Is it designed to give John Bolton political cover to say, hey, I'm a good Republican. I didn't want to be part of the Democrats' political impeachment process, but I, sent my lieutenants. Fiona Hill was up there. Colonel Vindman was up there. I mean, what does he want to happen? And if a judge clears the way for him to rule, do you have the sense that he'd be relieved, mad, frustrated, happy? I mean, what's the sense from inside his legal team?
Well, I mean, look, it's still just on his deputy, Kupperman. But I think that there is a legitimate legal issue here where one branch of government is saying yes, the other branch of government is saying no, and this individual in Kupperman has to make a decision. And I think there's some concern in the on his legal team, Chuck Cooper's legal team, that if if he was supposed to appear for a subpoena and he didn't appear, and there was later a new administration, Trump lost, and let's say, whoever became president, a Democrat president, that they may prosecute these folks for not complying with the congressional subpoenas. So by going to court, they're getting a judge to rule on this issue. The Kupperman is saying, look, the White House is saying you can't do this. The Hill is saying they want me to talk. Judge, you decide, because if there were to be a new president, the statute of limitations is 5 years on for not complying with the congressional subpoena. That would potentially protect Kupperman going forward.
Well, I agree with that, Nicole, but I also think, that's only on why they wouldn't. I mean, I think the real question is, why isn't Ambassador Bolton going and testifying like these other 12 witnesses have, defying the president? And so there's obviously some reluctance on his part to testify. And indeed, the decision yesterday by Judge Jackson gives him carte blanche. If he wants to go and testify tomorrow, he is absolutely within his rights under that order. And, it certainly gives him cover. And I can't imagine anyone prosecuting him or anything like that, given this order yesterday. And so I think, there must be some reluctance on his part to go forward much. And, whether it's for the book or whatever, who knows, some loyalty to Trump, who knows?
Karine, let's break this down. The Democrats, I think there's some exasperation, I sense, from talking to people close to the committee, that Bolton has a red carpet. His story's been told by people like Sondland, by Fiona Hill. There is a model for someone like Bolton. Don McGahn spent 30 hours talking to Robert Mueller. He never said, in terms of what we understand, that he thought Trump committed a crime. He was a fact witness, and he managed to sort of come out of that as someone who nudged Trump to just barely the legal side of obstruction of justice. I mean, there is a model for someone who wants to comply with an investigation but doesn't want to be viewed as throwing his boss under the bus.
First of all, I don't eat turkey because I'm a vegetarian. And you can keep the fly in the gravy. I don't want that. But look, I think Judge Jackson's ruling yesterday was a total rebuke, complete rebuke to the president being above the law, the administration acting like the president is above the law, and so that is a good decision that we saw yesterday.
He basically said this thing, absolute immunity, isn't a thing.
Isn't a thing. It's not a thing. And while it's great for now McGahn could do whatever he wants with it, the target is Bolton. I think the target, like you said, Bolton, he should come forward and speak his truth and tell us what's going on. I mean, he has to make a decision now. History is watching him. Where is he going to be on this? Is he really going to be about the book and the money that he's getting for the book? And so I think we have to see what he's going to do. I think there's still time. Let's see what happens. It probably won't happen during the judiciary component, which is probably going to last a month. And it's going to be passed on the floor and go to the Senate. And then we'll see if it comes up in the Senate. But now the pressure is on Bolton. What is he going to do? History is watching.
Garrett, let me come to you on some information that I think is ripening just as we came on the air. I mean, the witnesses and the push for people like Bolton and people close to the president is one front, but I understand the documents have also yielded some pretty fruitful morsels, the kind of evidence that they've been able to go out and point to and talk to in terms of following the money and how the money held up. Talk about what we're learning about new documents from OMB.
Yeah, I've got some interesting new reporting on this. First of all, the actual impeachment committees are still getting stonewalled by every executive branch agency that they've reached out to. But other committees in the House have been probing this from different angles and had a little bit more luck. The House Budget Committee has managed to get their hands on some documents from inside OMB. They've produced a summary of those documents that I and a few other reporters have taken a look at. And what those show is that the very first time a piece of paper was signed as related to this hold on money for Ukraine was on the evening of July 25th, just a few hours after President Trump got off the phone with President Zelensky in Ukraine. That was the first official action taken to actually put this hold into place. It was also the last time that a career official at OMB signed any document relating to that hold. It was after that that those documents, which had to be renewed and changed over a period of the next couple of months, were signed over and over again by a political appointee at the Budget Office. And I'll bring that back to my very first point. That political appointee is someone who has thus far refused to comply with the subpoena and come testify, but who could be affected by this order on the McGahn case.
Neil Katyal, I want to read you Donald Trump's tweet, which we know from the Mueller probe that his tweets were examined as potential witness tampering and efforts to sort of speak or channel messaging or threats or whatever to potential witnesses. Let me read you what he tweeted today. This is from the president's Twitter feed. I'm fighting for future presidents in the office of the president. Other than that, I'd actually like people to testify. Don McGahn's respected lawyer has already stated that I did nothing wrong. John Bolton is a patriot and may know that I held back the money from Ukraine because it is considered a corrupt country. And I wanted to know why nearby European countries aren't putting up money also. Likewise, I would love to have Mike Pompeo, Rick Perry, Mick Mulvaney, and many others testify about the phony impeachment hoax. How might that age, Neil Katyal?
Oh, my God, give me a break. The idea that Donald Trump is out for, protecting the rights of future presidents. I mean, this is the guy who's going to destroy the notion of executive power. People like us who served in the Justice Department really care about that and have husbanded that resource. And he's prompting ruling after ruling to destroy executive branch powers like yesterday's opinion. And so, his legacy is not going to be to protect presidents, but to weaken them. And then the idea that he wants to go and have these people testify, that can happen tomorrow. Bring it on. But this president isn't doing that. He's gagged all those very people in that tweet, Pompeo, Bolton, etc., from going and testifying. And that's why the way you started this program was to talk about the House Judiciary Committee invitation next week for hearings. And the very last line of that order, of that letter that Chairman Nadler wrote, is very significant because it says to the president, if you continue to stonewall, if you continue not to produce witnesses and documents, we reserve the right for appropriate remedies. And what I think that's getting at is what happened in Nixon, because in Nixon, Nicole, Nixon tried to order that same stonewalling, and the Senate said, if you do that, we're going to all order these witnesses here, and we're going to start jailing them. And I read what Chairman Nadler did as that kind of threat. Nixon, of course, backed down famously and allowed people to testify. I sure hope President Trump does this. I hope he follows what's in that tweet, because if he doesn't, he's hiding the truth from the American people.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.